Paradise, the jewel of the Pacific, the most beautiful place in the world, Hawaii, where every day begins with the perfect sunrise and ends with the perfect sunset, a place where you can find yourself, your real self, free from all of life's struggles and strife. Welcome to... Hold on. Welcome to Paradise. Sorry, just battling a cold here. Okay, so obviously Hawaii is not really like that, despite what the marketing material may highlight. And so rather than peel away the romanticism of what Hawaii seems to be to most of the outside world with facts and statistics about cost of living and how hard it is, I thought I'd just talk story about what it's like by using three analogies. One, a very common analogy that Hawaii is like living in a theme park. The second is a literary analogy. And the third is an analogy that came to me in a dream. I know it sounds crazy, but I really do want to explain this because the dream one in particular, it's kind of about like culture here, like on a very local kind culture, not native Hawaiian culture, but a very local kind culture, which if you're from here or you're interested in Hawaii, you may want to know about it. So I do want to talk about these three analogies. I'm going to go by them really fast because I could probably spend a whole video talking about each of them. All right, so first, the most common analogy that we probably hear online is that Hawaii, or living in Hawaii, is a lot like a theme park, or people try to tie that Hawaii is not your theme park, right? Tourists come here and they act any way they want, and locals got to just deal with it because, well, we're like the theme park employees. I think it really comes down to living in a tourist destination, and there are probably other places in the world where life is probably very similar to what we experience here in Hawaii. And I think in a lot of ways that analogy holds true. Having worked at a zoo, after a while, it kind of like wears off. You know, like I thought, oh, it'd be kind of cool to work at a zoo. You get to see all the animals. You can see them before hours, after hours. Yeah, it was nice to work in a zoo because I got to see all the people, but actually, oftentimes I felt like I was supposed to be invisible, and maybe that was self-imposed. It wasn't like, you know, anyone told me, oh, just be invisible. But when you're working that type of job, like service type of job in a destination that, you know, we're really there to serve the customers, the visitors, improve that experience, your role is to sort of step back. And I think in a lot of ways, maybe that's where the hurt feelings come from in Hawaii, is that it does sometimes feel like a theme park where as the local residents, as the local workforce, maybe sometimes people feel like they're just supposed to be in the background, like a theme park, like live action animatronics, like people dressed up in costumes, and some people literally are dressed up in like costumes here. But like we're supposed to just kind of be in the backdrop, and then everything is to service and to enhance the visitor experience. So I understand where that sentiment comes from, but at the same time, I do also recognize that it's tourism that really pays the bills here, and it's tough. And so this is sort of what we're stuck with. And so a lot of the choices that we make business-wise, maybe even policy-wise, they're sort of geared to ride that horse. It's wonderful to visit places like theme parks, like attractions, like Disneyland. But if you had to actually live there, work there, and you couldn't like leave, it's very difficult to leave, it may not be as fun. And I think that's more, what is trying to be conveyed when people say that. Okay, now second analogy, and this is like the literary analogy, and it is like the book The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. I know, maybe kind of cliche pulling out Dr. Seuss as a literary reference, but one of my favorite authors of all time. If you're not familiar with the story, the guy comes and he makes these sneeds. He is cutting all the trees, and there's the Lorax trying to say stop because he's destroying all the trees, and then eventually all the pollution, all the trees are gone, and everybody has to leave. The analogy, though, that I pull out of the story is towards the end of the story, or the latter half of the story, where the Lorax is sending all of the animals away, you know, like the little bears and the birds and the fish, and he's sending everybody away because there's so much pollution and the trees are slowly going away. And the analogy that I pull out of this story is kind of sometimes how it feels when people are kind of leaving Hawaii. You know, we have 15,000 people leaving Hawaii per year. Granted, they're not all like local. A lot of them moved here and maybe, you know, that 3 to 5 years, and they're going back to where they're originally from or somewhere else. But it's a lot of local people, a lot of local families. And sometimes as you see all these people leave, you do get a sense of like you're kind of like left behind, and like the Lorax is kind of sending people away, and you know, it's really sad. I've had family friends who've had to move away, and I don't know what to say, because when I left, it was college, right? But when they're leaving, it's for a completely different reason, and I don't know if they're coming back. The Lorax was hoping that those creatures could come back to the area, but really it's not very hopeful. I guess in the same sense, when people are leaving Hawaii, I'm hoping that they can come back like I did, you know, after college. But I know for a lot of them, that's never going to be an option. They're never going to be able to come back unless they either inherit a house or they just earn so much money, they live their life, and then they think about coming back here 20, 30 years from now just to retire and to see how things have changed. The Lorax is the last one to leave. And I kind of wonder and ask myself, is that going to be me? You know, like, not that I'm going to be the last local left. And, you know, but in thinking about life in Hawaii, and especially because I have a YouTube channel that talks about Hawaii and the realities of living in Hawaii, I kind of just wonder sometimes, like, I'm making all these videos and I'm reaching out to all these local people who have moved away, people who are interested in coming, all totally fine. But I do wonder, am I going to be like the Lorax, and am I going to be lifted away one day and be like, you know what, we got to leave, you know, and that would be sad. I don't think so. Let me just say, I don't really think so, but I do think about that, and I do wonder about that. Whew, okay, not to get too heavy there, but the third analogy. And the third analogy, it stems from this dream that I had. Okay, so this isn't like life in Hawaii from a macro perspective. This is like super like ultra micro, nano micro. I don't know what the term is, but this is like very small, very subtle, but I think it's very important. And I think if you're local, or you are familiar with how life here in Hawaii is, I think it's very relatable. So in my dream, we were at a theme park. We were waiting around to buy tickets for something. The way the line worked was it sort of like snaked, kind of like if you know like the Costco at Hawaii Kai. It kind of like snakes back and forth. I know they get fancy lines, because the one at Evile, you just get the straight lines, right? But theirs is fancy. They go back and forth. And so that's how this line kind of was. It kind of like snaked a little bit. There was like a path, a sidewalk. So there had to be a break in the line. Like an intersection, you don't go in the intersection, you just wait, because you're the next car that's gonna go, right? So it's just assumed that the line, I'll try to do a diagram, but like the line goes around, and then there's a sidewalk, a path, and then there was me, and I was the next person in this snake of a line. So I'm standing there and I'm waiting, because the next person that buys their ticket and the line moves up one step, I'm moving across with my family. Like, we're all four of us, we're gonna go across, and then we'll be on the other side of the sidewalk, and then the next person hopefully will wait and not just, you know, block the whole path. So I'm standing there in this dream, and all of a sudden this auntie shows up, and she stands right on the sidewalk, kind of in front of me, but sort of off to the side. And I'm thinking to myself, she knows the line is behind me, because there's a lot of people behind me in the line, right? She knows that, right? I don't have to explain to her how this line works, right? Obviously, she can't believe that that's where the line ends and she can just stand there, right? But lo and behold, she thinks the line actually starts there. So she invites her family, hey, come on, go stand behind me. And so now you got the auntie with her family, and they're breaking off into their own separate line. Meanwhile, there's the main line, which I am at the front of, and behind me is like plenty people. And now I gotta make a tough decision in the dream. Am I gonna speak up? Or am I just gonna let this go? Because, you know, here in Hawaii, we don't want to speak up. We don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to be mean to auntie, but, you know, at the same time, it's like, hey, You can't be doing that. Maybe if it was just me, I'd just be like, you know, auntie, it's fine. Just go ahead. But the thing is, I got plenty of people behind me. And then in the dream, the auntie, she just starts saying and telling everybody else, hey, the line starts right here. Because now they view her as like the line expert, right? Because they see people lining up behind her, like her family. And so when people come up, they ask her, oh, is this where the line starts? And she's like, yeah, just get behind me, just get behind me. So now, not only is the line growing behind her, but she's telling people to line up behind her. So now at this point, I got to figure out, okay, what am I going to do, right? Because clearly, I don't think she's being like mean about it. Like I don't think she's like doing it out of ill will, like she's trying to get away with it. She just doesn't know. I don't want to be the one, but you know what, if someone doesn't say anything, you know, it's gonna get out of control, because now you got this second line forming that's a lot smaller than the line behind me, but all the people behind me are counting on me to say something, because if not, the line gonna keep moving, and then we're gonna be behind basically line 2B at this point. It's getting out of control in the dream. And the thing is, I know if I speak up when I say something, it's gonna be pretty bad. This auntie gonna take it out on me, because number one, not only does she and her family gotta get in the back of the line, but now she gotta explain to everybody, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Actually, the line starts behind this second line, like this line that clearly is the line, right? But you know, it's a lot to ask of someone. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, you know, and my wife is next to me and she's like, are you gonna say anything? I know this is starting to get like real, right? But this is all in the dream. I'm standing there and I don't know what to do. And I bring this up as an analogy because oftentimes in Hawaii, life can be like that. People do certain things. They act a certain way. And you're like, okay, are they being like that because they don't know? They know they can get away with it? Or what's going on? And if you point it out, sometimes you're going to be like, what? Or if you don't point it out, other people will get upset. And I think that's a tough spot to always be in like everyday life. As I'm making more of these YouTube videos, maybe that's why I had the dream, because there comes a point where when I start talking about life in Hawaii, sometimes I have to point the microscope, magnifying glass, probably the better term here, at local people, including myself. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about us as locals. And it's collectively, it's not personal, it's just collectively. But I gotta decide whether I'm gonna speak up and say something or I just gonna let it go, right? Because in the dream, I could have just let it go, but there's all the people behind me, which I presume for trying to interpret this, it could be the other local people, it could be other people thinking about moving here, just other people, right? They're counting on me to say something, because if not, we all gotta wait, we all suffer, we all hurt. And then there's this other narrative of the second line that's going on. Oh man, it's getting kind of like Freudian here. But as I think about that dream and what life can be like here, maybe that doesn't apply to everybody, but I can just say for speaking for myself, I feel that sometimes. Not just because I have a YouTube channel, but because sometimes we see local people doing stuff. Sometimes we see visitors doing stuff, right? And for some people, they love pointing out when the visitors do stuff wrong, right? On social media, on in real life, right? They love calling out visitors. But you try call out a local, it's hard. And one of the things that I realize and I accept by making videos, by the way, is I'm open to that criticism. You know, I accept that. I'm making these videos, trying to be helpful, trying to be interesting, try to just share. But I also know that I'm open to all the criticism and all of that. Thank goodness it's not on like Instagram or some other social media platform, because I really don't care all that much for those platforms. But on YouTube, I understand that I'm open to that. and I welcome that. But it's a big responsibility. And it's one that maybe at the time of the dream, I was feeling that responsibility. But I also know it happens to other local people too. You know, when it might be time to speak up about certain issues, about certain things. And we kind of like hesitate because it's like, I don't like saying anything. I don't want to rock the boat. You know, mind your own business. If we let things go for too long though, we keep pushing it aside, then that second line, that second narrative, that second whatever, the line gets longer and longer and longer. And what's going to happen, going to build up more and more and more. And I think if we ignore it, we're just pushing the problem like for later down the road, just because we don't want to deal with it now. And it takes courage, it takes patience, understanding, gracefulness, probably aloha, right? Pretty much just aloha, right? But it's hard to do. And there's a very fine line, right, to doing that. So those are the 3 analogies that I got. Again, they probably could have been their own video. Sorry, this video is probably getting long, but I really just want to share. But let me know what you think about the theme park, about the Lorax, and about this whole line theme park debacle. Because I thought a lot about this, what it's like to live in Hawaii. And I could share and explain it and show all the data. But that's just the cost. But I really want to share about the feel. Like, how does it feel sometimes? And I think those 3 analogies do a pretty good job. So I'm going to rest up because I'm still feeling a little bit, small kind sick. But yeah, thanks for watching, and aloha.